everyone, my name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we're going to be talking about the differences between exclusive and inclusive negotiation. Now, I have a video from probably two and a half years ago at this point where I go over the basic 101 level stuff about negotiation and negotiation techniques. However, because that video is so old, I just want to start off with like a good foundational base of what is negotiation and what role does it play in BDSM. So, negotiation is the process in communication by which the participants in a BDSM scene come to an agreement of how that scene is going to go. This often features conversations about limits, safe words, boundaries, what activities the people involved want to do in the scene, what they want to avoid, so on and so forth. And they can come in so many different shapes and sizes. There are negotiations that take 5 minutes. There are negotiations that are ongoing for hours at a time for months on end, especially for really complicated scenes. So a complete discussion of every type of negotiation is not really in the scope of this video, but suffice to say, it really just boils down to the communication that happens between involved parties in a scene. If you want more resources for things like what is a safe word, what is negotiation, more details, I will put links to previous videos and other resources down below so you can have access to those. Now, when I made my original video about negotiation, I didn't yet have access to the language or knowledge of inclusive versus exclusive negotiation. And I think if I had known about the differences in these techniques, it would have really affected how I developed my own negotiation style, and it would have affected some of the play that I did. It would have resulted probably in more positive experiences, especially when I was newer. And the reason for that is basically what happens is people don't really know about these two styles. They don't know exclusive, they don't know inclusive. It's all just negotiation, right? And what ends up happening, especially with new people who, again, are kind of forming their own ideas about what negotiation is and how scenes are supposed to go, you end up with people on opposite sides who have not communicated this to each other. And I was introduced to this specifically because we were having some issues in our local community and really just across the world of BDSM, where there were so many situations where people had negotiated a scene. They were on opposite sides of the inclusive versus exclusive spectrum, and you would have person A on one side going, I never told him he was allowed to do this, why did he do it anyways? And then you have the other person saying, well, they never told me not to do it, so why are they mad at me for doing it? They didn't tell me it was a hard limit. And then it makes it really like messy and hard to have good scenes when that's the kind of thought processes that are happening and people aren't talking about them. And hopefully being introduced to this idea, hopefully give you some additional language that you can use at the start of your next negotiation period so you can make sure that you really are on the same page and you have a complete understanding of how the scene is going to go. So, what are exclusive and inclusive negotiations then? Exclusive negotiations basically mean that you are telling the person everything that you don't want to have happen, all the things that you don't want to feel, all the things you want to try and avoid in the scene. You're basically putting up a wall that says these particular things are off limits, but everything that I don't say is potentially okay. This can mean you're listing out your hard limits and your soft limits, your triggers, your phobias, your just weird things that maybe aren't hard limits but aren't really things that you're super enthusiastic about. It could be about avoiding certain emotional states or avoiding certain specific phrases like baby girl or slut or other language that you don't want to have used in the scene or anything else. But the problem with exclusive negotiation in particular, especially when you're new, is you probably have not fully contemplated exactly all of the crazy shit that happens in the BDSM world that people do actively seek out and enjoy. And I think we spend a lot of time, especially in the online community, focusing on very specific aspects of BDSM to the point where it seems like, oh, nobody's really into this, it's just a fantasy. There are some things that seem like fantasy to a lot of people, and for 1%, it is something they do every single day. And with an exclusive negotiation style, if you forget to mention that one thing, you have not given your partner or partners you are doing a scene with the full information that they need in order to actually conduct a scene that's going to be mutually beneficial for everybody involved. And the disadvantage of the style, in particular with new people, is what happens is sometimes you have unscrupulous people, or you have hard players who like to mess around with the newbies, who go, well, you never told me I couldn't use a blindfold. You never told me I couldn't use a banana as a gag. You never told me that I couldn't rub an eraser on your forehead. Like, because they're not going to know better than to tell you not to do that. And it becomes very rules lawyering. Again, it kind of takes it to a sort of negative place. At least for me, that is really, I think, the disadvantage of an exclusive negotiation style, if it is not something that you have actively done in a positive manner with a partner that you've done a lot of scenes with or that you have a lot of experience with. Because it basically just puts you in this mindset where you have to like play this game where like you have to kind of outsmart the other person you're doing a scene with in order to predict and tell them not to do all of the crazy potential things that they could want to do, so that way you don't put yourself in a bad situation. And that is really hard, especially, again, as a new person, when you don't know all of the potential crazy things that could happen. Now, I've kind of ranted about this negotiation style in a way that I think is a little bit unflattering, so I just want to emphasize these are about the potential sort of worst case scenarios that could happen if you go into this negotiation style without realizing that there are alternatives, without sufficient experience to make good decisions with this negotiation style, and if you're playing with somebody you don't really know that well and that you can fully trust to actually respect your consent and your revoking of consent mid-scene. Because my biggest fear with people who don't really know about this, don't have the language for it, they go into the scene where this is the assumed style of negotiation, and they don't tell somebody not to do something, the person does it anyways, and then they blame themselves for not having thought of it beforehand. And that is not how I believe good, active, healthy consent practices work. Now, I know a lot of people who practice this negotiation style with their partner in a happy and healthy way, but that's because they have experience, they know each other very well, they've already established all of the groundwork for limits and boundaries and that kind of thing. And most importantly, and what is I think most relevant, is they enjoy doing consensual non-consent play. I don't yet have a video explaining what that is, but suffice to say, it's a specific type of scene and or a specific type of relationship where somebody basically negotiates in advance to give up portions or the entirety of their consent for certain activities during a scene. It's complicated, it's hard to do well. A lot of people really, really like doing it, but it takes a while to get to a stage where you can do that in a reliable manner that's healthy, and it takes a lot of tweaking, a lot of conversations, a lot of communication about all of the like gross feelings you have about certain things in your life and trauma and all sorts of junk. And if you are somebody who has 2 weeks of experience in a scene, and you've just met somebody at a party who wants to do a flogging with you, you don't have the time necessarily to go through and work through all of those processes in order to make it as successful as possible. Now, I also know people who enjoy doing pickup play with CNC, and they do it fine, and that is what works for them and their community, and it's just understood and it's consensual for everybody involved. But that's more of the exception, not the rule. And I think especially when you're new, less risk is better. There is time to get to those more complicated things. There is time to get to the point where maybe you can do exclusive negotiations, where you can have a partner that you trust fully to always have your best interest in mind, even when they're doing really crazy fucked up shit to you. And that's basically exclusive negotiation. Now, on the other side of this is inclusive negotiation. And basically what that is it means you are saying the exact things that you want to do, and everything that you don't mention is off limits. So basically what you're doing is you're saying, I want these specific feelings, I want these specific goals for the scene, I want to have these specific implements, these activities, this time period, blah, 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 blah. And it is basically creating a very defined boundary about what the scene is going to look like. And I think there are a wide variety of reasons why this is advantageous. Obviously, good for new people who maybe don't really know what they want yet, so they don't accidentally wander out into areas that are potentially uncomfortable for them. It is good for pickup play because you're only focusing on the things that you want to do and are excited about doing. It makes it a lot easier to have a negotiation that lasts for 5 minutes rather than 45. It is also good for people who are with new partners, and particularly with power exchange, when you are trying to figure out what that looks like. Having an inclusive negotiation for specifically, I want to do a pet play scene and I want you to call me baby girl. That will help you kind of figure out and help your partner figure out exactly what you're looking for in that particular dynamic. And I think it serves a purpose for everybody across the BDSM spectrum, be you top, bottom, switch, power exchange, no power exchange, whatever it happens to be, because I think it lends a more positive outlook to the negotiation experience compared to exclusive negotiation. Because again, with exclusive negotiation, if it's not something you're like actively driven to do and you just assume that is the negotiation style that you have to do, you're trying to just think about all the things that the person on the other side might do to you, and it becomes very adversarial. Basically, with an inclusive negotiation rather than an exclusive negotiation, you are giving your partner the particular tools to say, this is what we're going to build the scene with, whereas with exclusive negotiation, you're taking tools away from your partner and saying, we are not going to do a scene with these elements. And for I think most people, an inclusive negotiation is going to be, again, a little bit more of a positive experience, regardless of if you specifically have a lot of experience in the scene or not. Neither one of these techniques is inherently superior to the other, and I feel like maybe I've made it sound that way in this video. It's not necessarily about one being inherently better, one being good, or one being bad. I think it's more about assessing the risk level for each individual type of negotiation. An exclusive negotiation, just by its very nature, is inherently more risky and dangerous, and thus this causes me to want to put a lot of disclaimers on this negotiation style, because it is so easy to have it go wrong and have it end up being a more negative space unless you do have that groundwork already laid out that's necessary for it. Whereas inclusive negotiation, I think, is easier to adopt for a lot of people. It is something that can be done a lot more quickly, and that causes me to recommend it, I think, for more situations than an exclusive negotiation style. But no matter what you do, if it's one of these, if it's something else entirely, it doesn't matter. As long as it's something that you and your partner or partners is actively consenting to, if it's something that makes you feel good about your BDSM, if it is something that contributes to you and your partner's well-being and enjoyment of a scene in a positive way, I am all about that. That, at the end of the day, is, as always, what really, really matters. Now, if you want to know more about negotiations and negotiation styles and BDSM scenes and how to do them and how to meet people, I have plenty of resources for that. Please check the links in the description down below if you want to check those out. If you want to see more from me, I make videos twice a week all about all sorts of BDSM and alternative sexuality related topics. If you did really like this video and you want to support my channel, the best place you can do that is over on Patreon. That is what funds this channel. That is what allows me to do all sorts of cool exclusive perks and rewards and photo shoots and videos and all sorts of really fun, interesting things. So if you haven't already, please do check it out. If you already support me, thank you so, so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you guys next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.